Hey guys, today I've got the second episode of the Speedrun Guide series. This time we have the new 5.1 Abyss, and just like before, I'll be showcasing not just the best clips in terms of speed, but also unique and interesting teams and playstyles. It's just a mix, and as usual, the goal of this series is to help you guys learn different strategies and techs that you can implement in your own accounts and teams. And also I'm shouting out all the different speedrunners who do make it into the series, so you can check out their channels too. And like I always say, the speedrun community is very chill. No one really cares about which team is the fastest overall. What it's more about is you take your main DPS and you master them. You learn their fastest teams, the fastest strats, and it's more about learning how to optimize your favorites. So let's get into the 5.1 Abyss. How does this Abyss work? Well, as I covered in my usage rate video, this Abyss is unfortunately pretty biased. The bottom half, no one is really doing. There's a lot of geo shields here, making it scuffed for most teams. So most people are focusing on the top half. But even with the top half, the main difficult chamber is this first one. Both these consecrated enemies have high resistances. Like I covered before, that makes res shred even stronger than it normally is, meaning teams pretty much need at least one res shredder. So you'll see most teams either have Shiloden or Kozwa, or sometimes even both. And then gameplay wise, players need to figure out how to kill this first vulture enemy close enough to the second electro scorpion in order to get the smoothest clears. And the chamber 2 and 3 are usually quite easier. So let's dive in right with the clears. Okay, so this is a super cool run. I think people will be very interested in this one. It's a 3-cost Mualani run. C0 with Sith, C0 signature weapon on Shilonen, Sucrose, but it uses a C4 Xinyan with White Blind. You definitely don't see every day. Very high damage is needed on Mualani skill and burst shocks to meet the HP thresholds. This Abyss. It's very tight. You either meet the DPS threshold and you kill the enemy, or you don't, and you have to use another skill or another burst, which adds up to a lot of extra time, which probably makes Widsith better than the signature in this Abyss. Widsith gives so much more burst damage than the signature. Okay, chamber 2, there is a short lag between the meter shell being hit by the shock and dying, so this time is used to gain one more surfing stack. This is something that I also used in the previous Abyss. A lot of people might not know, but one of Mualani's biggest strengths is because it takes time for enemies to die. Whilst the missile in the air is hitting, you can build stacks on them just before they die. So with me there, you can see that I built up 2 stacks, which means I only need to build up 1 stack to hit the next enemy. So that's something that she can do in AoE, where if you can utilize it, it's crazy. It's a big advantage. Chamber 3, burst shock of over 1.2 million damage is needed to instantly kill. So that's about the threshold. And again, that's like a Widsith thing. That's what makes Widsith so good here. But yeah, this is a cool run. It just showing that Xinyan is pretty useful here. What does Xinyan do here? Well, honestly, so someone asked in the chat, like, what does Xinyan actually do here? One thing you can say that Xinyan does here is that she can immediately like apply the pyro with her skill. Whereas with Xiangling, if you're using Guoba, you have to put down Guoba and then wait a bit, or you can use Pyronado. It's more of a big deal if you're using Instructor, but because they're using Arcade Petra, that's not a huge deal, but it can add up to a decent deal. But yeah, it's that instant pyro on the skill that can be quite useful. But I don't think anyone's saying that Xinyan's the best in this slot. It's just a good use of Xinyan. We've got another Noelle run here by Shadowplasm. I believe Shadowplasm was in the previous video. Yeah, the previous video had a 7-cost Noelle run, and that was very impressive. Noelle, Farina, Goro, and Chiori. But this time, it looks like Goro has been like power crept, and Goro has been replaced by the C2R1 Shiloden. Shadowplasm basically had to pull C2 because it's a triple geo team. So that's kind of scuffed. I think for most players, you probably just stick with Goro, or maybe even Kachina, because she would give you like the C1 Chiori for free. She gives you the defense buffs and the scrolls buffs for Farina Noelle as well. And that's what we was asking last time. I was asking last video if Kuchina would be stronger than Goro in this old team. People weren't even sure. I think some people even said that Kuchina wasn't stronger, but now Whisperwalk is saying in the chat that Kuchina is stronger. So this is the video. In chamber 1, so rather than waiting, like waiting at the back of the room, attacking the Firebird straight away, and then the Firebird and you will slowly move towards the back of the room. So you can immediately hit the second enemy. Look at that. So then you save time. You don't need to like wait at the back of the room for it to teleport, or you don't need to like run towards it. And then you just kind of just gets bullied at the end. Chamber 2. Chamber dies so quickly, you don't have much uptime on Noelle. But you should burst N1, Shilonen burst N2. Chiori burst to get all the Chiori talent procs. In the chamber 3, the enemies die even faster, so you can skip Chiori's burst. Okay. Jesus Christ, what the hell? A burst. So she's doing 300k damage. This is basically like a sub DPS Shilonen build. So it's not terrible to cast her burst then. They're doing like over 100k. You either go all this way with your investment or you don't. Because there is no Geo construct, so you want the C1 on Chiori. Shilonen also doesn't really work without the C2, so you need to get that. I guess if you use the Kuchina, then you could keep Chiori at C0. That would lower the cost by 5 if they paid Kuchina. Obviously the damage would be weaker, but that would be a slightly more relatable option if people want to try that out. So this is C0 Alhaitham with his weapon, C0 Nahida, C2 Farina. So honestly, it does seem that like if you're an Alhaitham speedrunner, it's the starter pack. You need like at least C2 in one of them, either Nahida or Farina. It's just hard to meet the DPS thresholds otherwise. Good RNG. Enemies aren't moving around all over the place. And perfectly positioned for the Electro Scorpion guy. So Nahida, skill, normal attack, charge attack. Charge attack on the switch, like Withering Waves outro style, getting as much damage as possible. Saving Alhaitham for the second wave. Solid grouping. This might be the limit. I'm interested if there are like faster runs at this like low-ish cost. It's very hard to find any Alhaitham run that doesn't have at least one C2, but a lot of people have both, like Farina C2 and then Nahida C2. They have both of them. So this is quite impressive, the fact that it's a C0 Nahida, because I'm sure there are people out there that think you can't get any impressive run with Alhaitham at all. So this might be quite interesting, just showing just how you can optimize his runs and how you can get like decent runs, but it does need to be somewhat dolphin as like a baseline, unfortunately. Ganyu runs are usually very complex, so there's usually a lot to learn. Funnel Kazuha skill into Kazuha burst whilst repositioning, so his ult will apply pyro to the Scorpion, and here it doesn't get the Bennett buff for the first shot, but with Shilonen C4 there's more than enough damage. And then Bennett E on the Scorpion for energy and also for melts. Yeah, so Ganyu C6 up is usually very dank, but luckily like her C6 is one of the best old C6s that she's still pretty relevant. It just requires like 10 times more skill than the newer characters, but she's like one of the only oldest characters that can get within the same similar-ish clear times. Shoot the ground with Ganyu to preserve one Shilonen C4 stack. Here I hold aim. You hold the aim shot, so it allows you to swap instantly after shooting, with book to bypass swap cooldown. And then chamber 3, You can skip Bennett buff for the first shot and still have enough damage. And he also skipped Freedom Sworn on the first shot by immediately using Kazuha's burst without an E. Yeah, if anyone didn't know that, if you just cast Kazuha's burst, you like delay the Freedom Sworn buff activation because Freedom Sworn requires 2 reactions. So you can save it for when you need it. Or in this case, just because you don't need to cast the skill. This is a 7.5 cost Lyney, which is C0R1 Lyney, C0 Shilona with Peak Patrol, C1 R1 Chiori, and then Missplitter Bennett. So this is the new double Geo core, very popular for whale runs, but TacticalNuke is just wanting to see how good it is for dolphin runs, and I think it's actually pretty good. Maybe not the most optimal speed runs for a particular DPS, but it might be competitive at least. If it's not the fastest for like dolphin teams, it's like at least pretty competitive. Do you guys remember the days when people said that Chiori was finished? Chiori was power crept? Chiori has like 0 pull value. I remember those days. You can see that Chiori's putting in some serious work here, and then booking Lyney's skill, so his burst is up for chamber 2. And a lot of runs, booking Lyney's skill is very important because the thing with Lyney is usually you kill enemies with his skill, but that is also what generates him energy. You want to kill enemies with his skill, but you also want the energy. So what you have to do a lot of the time is his book, which is like pressing an F button. So you absorb the particles before the chamber ends, because otherwise you're going to start the next chamber and then you're going to be missing out on all those pyro particles. The chamber 2 clear time is locked to Lyney's cooldown, which limits the clear time by a few milliseconds, but overall not a big deal. The key here is to distribute damage equally and have them grouped by the 4th charge attack, which is basically right when the skill comes off cooldown. And what he's also doing is saving Chiori's skill intentionally later in order to get those A1 procs on the rune graders. If you didn't know, Chiori's damage is not entirely like the dull or field damage. It's this tapestry talent here. When your active party members normal attacks, charge, plunges hit, the automaton hits extra coordinated attacks, and this is actually quite a lot of her damage, which is basically why Chiori C1 isn't double her damage, because this is double her dose. So you'd think this doubles her damage, but because of this talent dealing a lot of damage, and also the burst if you want to include it, it's why C1 ends up more like 50 to 60% rather than double the damage. So it's actually quite impactful. And yeah, as I said, sometimes in some runs you want to think about when you're utilizing that damage. And then chamber 3, this chamber is basically just about fishing for the right grouping RNG, just like all the other runs. You want to make sure you get as much AoE damage as possible and hit them both with a 3-stack skill. I think people on YouTube will be interested in seeing like this double Geo team with Lyney, because I'll be interested in seeing like how does this perform with other DPSs. Is it at least somewhat competitive with the other teams? Because it's a very popular duo. But of course it's not a C0 duo. Like I said, it's more like a dolphin kind of duo. It's like a way more offensive Zhongli Albedo, if you guys remember that, like the original double Geo core. It's like that, but just way better. So that was it. That was the 5 runs we decided to highlight this week. Hopefully you guys learned a thing or two from that. It could be a new team to try, or it could be a better strat in the team you're already playing. And yeah, thanks everyone who submitted their runs, of course. The links to the submission collection will be in the YouTube description. And honestly, our speedrun community keeps growing every patch. So if you want to get involved next time, then feel free to join the Discord and get access to the speedrun collection. Hope you enjoyed this video, and yeah, thanks for watching.